Hi everybody, it's Ben Thompson here from incodocs.com and welcome to the Import-Export podcast. Today we're talking about international freight and shipping and we're joined by Conor Hagan from Explorate. Conor, thanks for joining us today.
Great to be here, Ben.
So today, Conor and I want to discuss international freight and shipping, how it currently works and what companies are doing to improve that manual booking process. So before we get started today, Conor, tell me a bit about yourself and the experience you've had in this industry.
Yeah, no problem, Ben. So I've been in the industry for 15 years, mainly in freight forwarding. So in that time, I've worked in multiple locations. Obviously, as you can hear from my voice, didn't originate from Australia, but came out here about 10 years ago after working for DHL for 5 years. In that time, set up a life science division, the first one in Ireland actually, where we had quite complex customers and quite complex supply chains. So from a very, very early stage in my career was involved in the complex side of supply chains. When I came to Australia, a bit of a different story. So pretty much did a lot of project-oriented work with projects in Botswana, Mozambique, and Northern Territory, to name a few. So really kind of got a good breadth of knowledge across the different supply chain, the supply chains that are out there. So, and that was my experience, and worked for a multitude of top 10 global freight forwarders, and now have started a business that does solve a problem that I saw repeatedly over those 15 years.
Absolutely, yeah. It's always good to speak to somebody who's had real world experience in the industry. So today what I want to do is explain to you is just discuss the current booking process, what that looks like, the problems with it and the pain points, and talk about how that can be improved and how people can implement software into their supply chains to make that process a hell of a lot easier. So can you walk me through, like as an example, as a shipper, I want to book my containers to be shipped from overseas. What's that current process look like? Like, am I engaging a shipping company and freight forwarder, and what are the issues that I face there?
Yeah, well, so I think that's just like you said, there's a kind of almost a confusion about what you do, especially when you start shipping. So we see that, I've seen that quite a lot. In my career, people don't really understand the dynamics and what you need to do when you ship cargo. But essentially, what I think our industry has to do better, and what we do better at Explorate, is treat shippers like consumers. They consume freight. And when you look at them like consumers, you can then kind of design a process that's not too unfamiliar to them, so they understand. So for example, we make booking freight like booking an airline ticket, because people do that and they understand the process that booking an airline ticket encompasses. But currently, when you look at the process of booking freight inside, let's say, a freight forwarder, where a lot of my experience resides, it can be a fragmented process. So you might hit about 3 or 4 people on your process just to get a quote, and that can take several days. And sometimes the options that come back are not really suitable for you as a consumer of freight. So that's something that I really kind of see from a shipper perspective. It can be confusing and sometimes a little bit daunting. But to shippers out there, don't be daunted. It is something that if you put a bit of time and effort into and you embrace technology, it can be quite a pleasant process. It shouldn't be something that you have to do, but we see that quite a lot of the time is the attitude that shippers take. It's something that they have to do to get their goods to market. You know, with the advent of Amazon and let's say 2-hour delivery. And that's the advent of that at the moment, especially in Australia, we don't have that. That's something that I think a good, let's say, freight booking process can start to bring to any business.
Yeah, absolutely. Today, we all see consumers wanting stuff now. And unfortunately, the international shipping booking process it's not as easy. It is quite complex, we understand, but it's not fast or easy for the consumer. You know, as you said, you're generally dealing with so many different people, and it can get days to give you shipping rates back. That's before you
100%. And I think to broach on that, like to really answer your question, when you look at the process from an internal perspective and what freight companies need to do to quote consumers, it is a bit disparate because there are so many different trading terms, for example, and that they have to consider. So if you buy on X Works, if you buy on FOB, so for the shippers out there, make sure you get your Incoterms locked down first before you request a quotation, so you understand exactly what you're asking for. And then secondly, if you look at how you get a quote through a freight forwarder or a freight company in the least drag manner, it's probably asking very, very succinct questions like, we've got a quotation for X goods out of, let's say, America. Can you give me a quotation out of Long Beach Port? Instead of giving an address and an address to deliver to, take a bit of power and control and start to educate yourself a little bit about what journey your freight is going to go on from where you're buying it from. So just understand that, I think, is the very first fundamental thing that shippers sometimes overlook. Yep,
exactly. And so in the market today, what are there any examples of freight forwarders or tech companies? What are they doing to actually improve that process, and how are they improving that process?
Yeah, I think there's a few incumbents that are doing very, let's say, forward-thinking things. A lot of top-tier global freight forwarders, and bear in mind, there's a lot of freight forwarders globally. At our last estimate, there was close to 40,000 globally. So when you look at freight forwarders as a whole, it's a pretty disparate market. But the top 10, they're starting to do some good things from a consumer user experience perspective. If you look at agility, for example, they have launched shipments. And I really think, having seen their platform and utilized it and transacted the shipment on it, it works out of the tin. It gives you what you want. You punch in an address, you punch in your mode of transport, and essentially that gives you enough data in a simple enough manner for you to then start the booking process and start that. So from the quotation through to the booking and through to the final execution, you can kind of do it online. There's still a human element though. So if something goes wrong, you want someone to reach out to. And I think that's where the digital platforms of today have to encompass the human element too. As you know, having shipped freight around the world, it does go wrong sometimes. You know, there are things that can happen that can either delay freight can go missing, someone hasn't done something along your supply chain. But I really think the offers to the market today show Shipperfreight is one, Kuehne+Nagel have FreightNet, and there's a few independents as well that I really like the look of. So Flexport, obviously, as you know, has raised a lot of money. They don't service Australia too well yet, but from what I can see and the feedback I'm getting from customers in the market is that they're doing quite exciting things and making the user experience between humans in the supply chain relatively, let's say, palatable for today's consumer.
Yeah, absolutely. It's important that these digital solutions, as you say, still encompass somebody to talk to. There's problems with freight all the time, and I think that's the struggle that some tech companies in particular need to keep in mind. Whilst having a really good streamlined digital solution for shipping or part of the process, the shipper is going to want to call somebody up straight away and get answers instantly. So they've got to find a sweet spot there.
Definitely. So I don't think anyone's nailed it yet, but there is, as we both know, a lot of action in that area. And yeah, definitely happy to share a bit more knowledge about the digital competitors coming through. But I really think that the value is, like you said, the human interaction to the digital element. And that goes on both sides, from the consumer side and then from the freight side as well. How you get two parties engaging in a meaningful conversation at the right time.
And I hear that you guys at Explorate are doing some really cool things to make that booking process a lot easier. Can you tell me how, as a user, how I'll use the system and how that will actually make the process of booking shipments easier for me?
Of course. So like I said at the beginning, we make booking ocean freight like booking an airline ticket. Now that is something that kind of gets bandied around a lot of industries at certain stages, but in freight, it's something that no one has mastered yet. So we needed to take a consumer on a journey from not having booked freight, and we've done this in our beta testing and trialing our product, taking someone who had never booked an ocean freight, even with a freight forwarder before, and make them go through the process of booking freight on our platform. Now, what we saw was once you make it as easy as 3 clicks, so essentially there's 3 steps in our process, that is, you can start the booking process directly with a shipping line. And why that's important is because there's a lot of confusion that comes with the intermediation between a consumer and who is actually shipping their product. So when you look at global freight forwarders, which we've talked about before, when there's 40,000 in the market and there's not that many shipping lines in the world, there has to be a more effective way to communicate with them. And that starts with making consumers come on a journey to say, okay, well, I'm booking my freight like an airline ticket. So when they then book a freight with an airline, they can engage a freight forwarder. What we found a lot of the time is actually they'll engage smaller parties. So you're getting this almost local commerce. So they'll reach out to a local trucking company and a local customs broker and start doing a lot of the supply chain individually themselves. And it actually takes a lot less time. Once you have readily available data, things that you can click and let's say processes happen, that's where the exciting stuff comes. So as long as you make it easy enough, which at Explorate we make booking freight very easy, but there are a lot of other things in supply chain that need to be made easier also. So like customs, for example. But once you make those little bits of the chain easy, then it does become like booking an airline ticket. You know, ourselves, we get an Uber or a taxi to the airport. We organize visas and insurance, and it is no different for freight. And there are logistics professionals out there who are just stymied by lack of information. I was even catching up with a freight forwarder. My first hire in Australia, actually, she was telling me that she didn't even know about the likes of Big Schedules. And Big Schedules is just a shipping line website where you can see schedules and see where all the vessels are going and coming and search what potential opportunity or potential shipping lines go on your route. She's a freight forwarder. She's been in the industry over 20 years. So that kind of digitization is just not in the hands of consumers yet. And there's something as simple as a sailing schedule. Even freight professionals are not using. So we're aiming to change that, and a bit of education goes a long way.
Absolutely, you're right. It's the technology is out there and the schedules are out there, but they're not linked together in the right way easily for the consumer to use, right? And your solution, you know, three clicks to book, to view a schedule. You know, you want to know the ETDs, the ETAs, you want to know the vessel names and the lead times, the sailing times, and you know, you want to know your rates straight away, your different faster and slower options, and then to actually click to make that booking is just, from my experience, it's streamlining that process very well. And like you said, whilst keeping contact with your freight forwarder so that you can call them if you need, or really speak to somebody if something goes wrong. So,
I mean, your freight forwarder, coming from freight forwarding, you know, it's a great industry, but a lot of the time you're spent quoting on things that do not happen. And that's no fault of the consumer. It's no fault of the freight forwarder, but someone has to wear that cost for someone to chase down a rate, put it inside a spreadsheet, contextualize that spreadsheet, send it off, put a validity on it. And when a booking comes in, pass on that booking with the contract number for the operations person to book that freight with a shipping line. That's the process that happens. And, you know, someone has to pay for that. Yeah. But if you digitize it in a simple way and you make consumers, the platform easy enough for consumers to engage on it, then the first time a freight forwarder hears about it is when they've got some work to do. It's like, hey guys, we've made a booking with a shipping line. We now need you to get that container picked up and brought to us. And by the way, we know where that empty container is, and we know where you need to drop the full one off at. So all of a sudden the shippers are becoming a bit more empowered. They have a bit more information. And from what we've seen in our trials, it's been incredibly powerful for them, and every single supply chain that we've touched has benefited from our product.
Yeah, it's a great leap forward. So yeah, it's great to hear. I encourage all of our listeners to get on your website, explorate.co, and check it out. And whilst you're here, what are some other key tips that you can give shippers when it comes to utilizing software that's out there now in the market, that can really just instantly improve their supply chain, whether it's communication or rates or visualization? What's some software out there or parts of their supply chain that they can instantly improve?
Yep. So firstly, I think the very first thing that we do when we go into a supply chain, and we have a quick look at it, we use Trello. Now, Trello is widely known in project management and startups. You know, a lot of people love Trello. It's free. It's easy to use. You know, you don't really need to induct, so it has that light approach. And then you start a bit of a board in regards to how your supply chain process happens. So it's free and it's easy. It's something that allows you to almost mind map out, okay, what are we doing on an average shipment? Do we have to place a purchase order? When do we place a commercial invoice? And you can kind of automate some of those processes in there too. So we really like Trello, and we advocate the use of it at a very early stage into supply chains. So just to understand what you're doing at a high enough level, then you can integrate software. Then you can understand, okay, well, what do we need to do? What do we spend most of our time doing? Where are we finding the most benefit or potential inside our supply chain? And once you identify that, you can engage different parties. So we really like the likes of Haven. They're a transport management system, and they're really relatively the larger supply chains and commodity driven supply chains use them, but they still have a very, very useful product. You can get onto the likes of Freightos and Flexport once again for free. You can start getting some benchmark quotations on them, and then start to understand how digitalization impacts on your supply chain. So in terms of some hints and tips, I would go Trello, start implementing some benchmarking with Flexport, Freightos, even seafreight, although I've seen varying degrees of reliability of actually executing on the rate that you're receiving. Yeah. So when you click on something, it's not necessarily true. I think you've had experience in that as well, where you kind of click on something and then eventually you get a templated form back and with a completely different rate than you clicked on. So that can happen in digitization, but it's really good for benchmarking and really good to implement that kind of systems inside your supply chain, and they're free and easy to use. So spend a bit of time, play around with them. You're not going to break anything, and they do give you a bit of power and control inside your supply chain.
Yeah, absolutely. I encourage everyone to try out that software and just see how it can improve instantly their company's operations. So that's really good. And with the booking process, you guys are improving it now. How do you see that in 5 years' time? Is it going to be very different? Is it going to take a long time to change? Like, how do you see the different parties in the supply chain working together? Is it going to change dramatically, or is it going to be a long process?
I think it's going to be relatively long, but the thing about digitalization is you can't really tell. It's more consumer driven. Technology is just an enabler. It's about changing the process and giving people a benefit for that. So it depends on how quickly the benefit is realized inside supply chains. But yes, I definitely see a big momentum shift coming. The shippers and people who consume freight want more transparency in their transactions, and they also want it to be easier. So I've never met anyone inside supply chain who wants something to be more hard or more difficult or more complex. So I really see the future of it being more like the Uber of freight, and people talk about it quite a lot without really understanding the dynamics of what Uber for freight means. But essentially, if you make booking a truck as easy as one click, and you start to get a bit of logic and inside that process, and you can almost automate it. So it is, your operators can go, okay, well, this container is ready for pickup and this box is ready for pickup. And we can scan it with our phone, and that then generates a unique identifier for that box, so we can just one touch and get a location on that too. So there's quite a lot of things that are required for the Uberization, but I really see it coming from 3 clicks in our world to probably one touch of a phone. Let's face it, that's where Uber has got to, and we expect that kind of service in our everyday lives. So why are supply chains any different? I believe in the next probably 10 years, not 5 years, and we will start to see a lot more supply chains run in that manner. Yeah,
that sounds great. 3 clicks to book or touch to book, or just, that's really, really good. I hope it all comes together, quicker than 10 years, but we'll see what happens there.
Definitely.
No, well, thanks very much for your time, Conor. I think today, you've given shippers some insight into, the international sea freight booking process. As you mentioned, it's quite manual and laborious, and it sounds like you guys at Explorate are doing some really cool things to make that as streamlined as it should be. So appreciate your time.
Yeah, cheers, Ben, and really like the work that Incodocs are doing, especially here in the community in Brisbane. A bit of a freight loving community that we're starting to build over here. So very happy to be on that journey with you guys and assisting wherever possible. So very, very much looking forward to seeing what the future holds.
Absolutely, the same. Thanks very much, Connor.
No problem. Cheers, Ben.